Whitey Bulger robbed banks, committed murder, dabbled in international arms trade, and even worked as an FBI informant. He was one of the most brutal mob bosses of the 20th century, and he lived a life that played out like a Martin Scorsese film. So, today we're going to take a look at Whitey Bulger, the mobster who eluded the FBI for 16 years. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History channel. After that, leave a comment and let us know what other organized crime figures you would like to hear about. Okay, grab your cup of donkeys, because we're shipping up to Boston. As a youth, Whitey Bulger constantly got into fights, and when he was only 14, he was arrested for larceny, so he was clearly eager to get started. Doing petty crimes as a teen gets you credit in your future mob career, like taking an AP class. His first major run-in with the law came after he joined a gang called the Shamrocks and was arrested for assault, battery, and armed robbery. Following the arrest, he was sent to live in a juvenile detention center. Not much is known about Bulger's time inside the detention center, but as soon as he was released, he joined the Air Force. We're not sure why. Maybe he thought he'd win more fights. Nobody argues with a guy in a jet. But his military career did not last long. Bulger quickly went AWOL. Despite running out on his commitments in the military, he received an honorable discharge in 1952. Immediately following his release, Bulger picked up where he left off in his teens, robbing banks and hijacking trucks. In 1955, he and some friends pulled off 3 major robberies, which would subsequently land him in prison for a decade. Arguably, his boldest robbery during this time period went down on May 17, 1955, when Bulger and 2 associates robbed the Industrial National Bank in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. Bulger and his crew made off with just over $42,000, which was the equivalent of just over $475,000 today. He didn't get away with it for long, though. A year later, he was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison, 10 of which he served in 3 different prisons in Atlanta, Alcatraz, and Kansas. Hey, at least the view kept changing. While serving time in Atlanta for armed robbery, Bulger allegedly volunteered to take part in the U.S. government's top-secret MKUltra program. He didn't do it out of the goodness of his heart, though. Bulger supposedly entered the program in exchange for time off his sentence. According to the man himself, inmates were told they were helping find a cure for schizophrenia, but in reality, the government was injecting them with LSD as a part of furthering what he called their brain warfare program. It sounds like the ravings of a paranoid conspiracy theorist wearing a tinfoil hat, but CIA documentation would later verify the experiments were real. Of the drug itself, Bulger said it caused a loss of appetite, hallucinations, hours of paranoia, and violent feelings. In his own words, "We experienced horrible periods of living nightmares, and even blood coming out of the walls, guys turning into skeletons in front of me. I saw a camera change into the head of a dog. It felt like I was going insane." In Bulger's defense, that sounds like a pretty bad trip, not at all like Yellow Submarine led us to believe. Bulger later claimed that he suffered from lifelong insomnia because of the experiments. It was probably the dog head thing. That would do it for anyone. After doing time for bank robbing from 1959 to 1962, Bulger returned to his old stomping grounds in Boston, something the people of Beantown would live to regret. He found work as an enforcer for Donald Killeen, a well-known criminal who ran the Transit Cafe, which was a bar that served as a cover for an illegal gambling ring. Bulger collected debts for Killeen, which is a gentle way of saying he terrorized money out of anyone who took too long to pay up. In 1972, Killeen was gunned down in his driveway. We imagine Bulger was devastated by the loss of his friend, but it wasn't enough to stop him from taking over Killeen's bar and using it to begin his own rise through the ranks of the Winter Hill Gang. From his place at the top of the hill, Bulger allegedly initiated the whacking of multiple Northeastern mob members. Wait, are we sure he was devastated about Killeen? Seems like he got over it pretty quick. In his 2011 trial, the jury decided that Bulger was complicit in 11 slayings in addition to a lengthy list of crimes, including extortion, money laundering, and drug dealing. So, he was a busy guy. Bulger's main source of income in the 70s, 80s, and 90s was the Boston drug trade, because he was a mobster in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. That's like asking a baseball player how he makes money. Bulger got a cut of every deal that happened in the city. And according to witnesses at his trial, if he wasn't paid, things got bloody. In Bulger's 2011 trial, former dealer Anthony Attardo told jurors Bulger's gang allegedly pressured him to use them as his source or pay an extra $100,000 to stay in business. Attardo did not pay up, which turned out to be an enormous mistake. While he was able to dodge Bulger for a while, the gangster eventually whacked his 17-year-old brother instead. Attardo told the jury that Bulger said he'd be next if he didn't get Bulger his money. Attardo grew up in Southie and knew Bulger's reputation. He knew how dangerous Bulger was, and that when Bulger said, "You're next," he didn't mean it for the next round of Pac-Man. Attardo quickly paid Bulger the money. Probably a good call. Your little brother probably preferred you would have done it earlier, but still, good call. As Bulger was rising through the ranks of the Winter Hill Gang in Boston, his brother, William Bulger, was traveling life on a slightly different path. William was rising through the political ranks to the presidency of the Massachusetts Senate. But blood is thicker than water, and oatmeal is thicker than both. But that's irrelevant. Even though the two brothers worked on different sides of the law, it's believed William used the power he held to keep Whitey one step ahead of the authorities. He also allegedly kept information from the FBI that could have helped put his brother behind bars much earlier than 2011. In 2003, William refused to give information about his brother to a congressional committee, likely because the information would implicate the then-senator in his brother's crimes, and also because snitches get stitches and/or end up in ditches, especially where the mob is concerned. William Bulger stepped down shortly afterwards, which was good for the rest of us, and he continued to visit his brother in prison. That's family for you. While masterminding a variety of crimes over the years, Bulger used intimidation and violence to cover his bases. While that is par for the course in terms of being a notorious gangster, Bulger was an innovator, and he decided to add one more weapon to his arsenal: the U.S. government. From 1975 to 1990, Bulger worked as an FBI informant, something he kept hidden for almost 20 years. In exchange for dropping the dime on the Patriarcha crime family, one of the oldest factions of the New England mob scene, Bulger was allowed to continue building his own criminal empire. It was a net loss for the city of Boston because Bulger was a much more violent presence than the Patriarchas. There's no record of just how many members of the underworld Bulger ratted out. However, his MO in working with the FBI became a major influence on the character of Frank Costello, played by Jack Nicholson, in Martin Scorsese's Academy Award-winning 2006 film The Departed. It's a pretty good movie, if you're into the Dropkick Murphys. In his time on the payroll, he gladly snitched on all of his Boston cohorts, while continuing to run his own extortion racket. It was a pretty great arrangement for Bulger. He was free to be as nasty as he wanted to be, while the FBI was busy taking out his competitors for him. During this time, he made friends with his federal handler, John Connolly, and used him to access all sorts of information. Connolly eventually even leaked the whereabouts of a former Bulger associate, John Callahan. Callahan later mysteriously turned up dead in Florida, but that wasn't enough to deter Connolly. In 1995, he told Bulger the FBI was tailing him and helped the criminal slip away. Hope that guy didn't get a Christmas bonus that year. Well, he probably got one from Bulger. In 1995, Bulger went on the lam with his girlfriend, Catherine Gregg. She allegedly had plastic surgery to alter her appearance, while he changed his name to Charlie Gasco, which is a good alias for a fugitive because it sounds more like the name of a ventriloquist dummy than an underworld kingpin. Whatever they were doing to stay hidden worked, and by 1998, Bulger had made it onto the FBI's 10 most wanted list for his alleged involvement in 19 deaths, on top of all the other stuff he did. In 2001, he moved up to number 2 on the list, second only to Osama bin Laden. Hey, don't take it too hard, buddy. That's like trying to knock Michael Jordan out of the top spot. There was no way that guy was going to dip below number 1, unless Thanos showed up. During his 16 years as a wanted man, reported Bulger sightings popped up everywhere from England to Los Angeles. As it turns out, he actually was in Los Angeles. It would eventually come to light that he had been living in Santa Monica, California the entire time. Honestly, not a bad place to hide out if you have to go on the run. But in 2011, the FBI finally closed in on Bulger after receiving a tip that the octogenarian was alive and well on the West Coast. His neighbor had been keeping an eye on him, and when the FBI publicized their manhunt for Bulger, she eventually put the pieces together and called in the G-Men. After searching Bulger's apartment, the FBI discovered 30 guns, almost $1 million, and multiple knives hidden in the walls. Man, that's like the most terrifying version of the Batcave. They arrested both Bulger and Gregg, who was charged with conspiracy to harbor a fugitive, conspiracy to commit identity fraud, and identity fraud. On October 30th, 2018, Whitey Bulger passed away in a West Virginia prison. Earlier that morning, Bulger had been transferred from a penitentiary in Florida. But within hours of his arrival, authorities found him unresponsive. The Federal Bureau of Prisons wouldn't comment on Bulger's death beyond confirming he was deceased. But an anonymous law enforcement official eventually revealed Bulger was taken out by his fellow inmates. It is now believed that Bulger was fatally beaten with a padlock wrapped in a sock while sitting in a wheelchair. He was also attacked by another inmate armed with a shiv, and there are reports that Bulger was discovered with both eyes and his tongue missing. In other words, all those years of snitching for the FBI finally caught up to him. The FBI hasn't confirmed why Bulger was transferred in the first place. A lawsuit filed by Bulger's family claiming the transfer was intended to deliberately place Bulger in harm's way was dismissed by the courts. Whatever the reason, in August of 2022, 3 men were charged with Bulger's, let's call it extreme, whacking. At least he hung in there long enough to see the Johnny Depp movie they made about him. So what do you think? Which of these facts about Whitey Bulger surprises you the most? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, check out some of these other videos from our weird history.